Okay, so there was a huge problem with that backswing then, and in today's lesson I'm going to give you the 3 biggest backswing mistakes I see and how you can go about fixing them. Let's get stuck into the video right now and find out how to do that. Okay, so what was the problem with that first swing and one of the big mistakes that I see golfers making? And it was that as I take the club away, what I tended to do was drag the handle, the grip here, inside towards my trail thigh here. So what starts to happen is that drags this club head away from the plane that it's meant to be swinging on. So if we had a line coming up from the driver now, we would see that ideally it works up and down this line pretty close to it to see that it's swung on the angle that it's designed to. But when we start to see this dragging motion in here, another thing also happens. Firstly, it's getting away from the plane, but also the club face is now rolling open. So as I roll this club open, if I don't roll it the same amount on the way back, we can see that that's pointing out miles to the right hand side. So ultimately, I'm going to have to try and correct this in the downswing. And it is one of the biggest mistakes I see happening down at Trafford Golf Centre when I'm giving lessons. And what it will always tend to lead to is someone who drags it inside, they will then throw it over the top as well. So if we can fix this takeaway mistake to start off with, we should stop seeing this over the top motion. So it's really simple. What I like to do with my students is get the feeling now, if we were to place a club to the ball and then put another ball literally about a club's width back from here, I would feel that I'm taking my club out towards this as I actually work away. But one little trick I want you to do to start off with, if you lock the club into your stomach here and just grip underneath the grip with your lead hand, so the left hand for me is a right-handed player, and then I take here, what I want to do, instead of using my hands to drag the club back inside, I want to feel that my torso is working the club back away a little bit more here. So notice now, if we had that line running up again, it would work somewhere pretty close to that instead of dragging the hands and rolling the face open and getting away from it. Once I've had a few of those, then what I would start to do, once I've taken my setup, is get this feeling of turning and just feeling like the toe of the driver here is just brushing past that ball that's a club width away. So as I go there now, again, when we've got the line in, we start to see that that club is actually working closer to plane, and as I get to the point where the club is first parallel to the ground, we see that the club face now is mirroring my spine angle. It's not the total opposite because I've rolled it open. As I work back here, we see that it gets into that nice little checkpoint, and from there I can make a pretty good backswing and not have to make any sort of alterations on the way down. So let's give that a go and see if we play the swing side by side, number 1 and this one, if they look any different and we get a different result. I think that one would put me in play quite often out on the golf course. Let's take a look at swing fault number 2 and see what that is. Okay, so swing fault number 2. And I see this more commonly in a beginner than sort of an established player. If you've had a few lessons and you started out this way, you've probably had this taken away from your backswing. And it comes from a thought process that as we're actually thinking about the golf swing, as I stand here, I have my ball and I have my target in the distance. It's a straight line up there. In the perfect world, we'd all hit perfectly straight shots, but we don't, unfortunately. But when I'm thinking about this straight line, the thought process gets a little bit mixed up and thinks, well, if I swing it straight, hopefully the ball will go straight. But that's not the case. What we actually need is a little bit of rotation and a little bit of folding of the arms in the golf swing to swing it on the angle the club is designed to swing to. But what we would see generally would be something where, as it goes back, basically the hands just pick the club up. So now notice how this club face is looking directly down at the ground there, and it's not looking like that checkpoint we had of the spine angle a moment ago. And also from this camera angle, what we see is I pick it up, notice how my body isn't turning and my arms are actually starting to buckle and bend. So for the golfer, like I say, generally a beginner who starts to pick it up, we'll get something where we get this narrow position at the top of the backswing and we get quite steep. So then as I work down into the ball, ultimately I'm chopping down on it and I get those nasty sky marks on my driver, and I would get pretty disgusting golf shots really. It would be something where it's like this we would see a lot of the time because I'm basically picking the golf club up there. So again, how do we fix that? How do we actually feel that we're going to get away from picking it up? So like I say, we need a little bit of fold and actual rotation in the golf swing. And what I want my players to do who do get into this position where the club face is totally down here like this and the arms are very narrow, I say to them, well, firstly, let's think about the toe of the golf club. If we can just think about this for a moment, we're going to be able to get into some better spots straight away. When you're picking it up, that toe is pointing directly out that way for me. What I want you to try and do is get the toe to look up at the sky for me. So if you're picking it up and we see this, you now want to feel that the toe is looking directly up to the sky. So to do that, I actually have to get a little bit wider here. It starts to hinge my wrists in the right manner, and I also have to rotate my forearms a little bit. The second part of this piece of the puzzle, I say to them, well, imagine you've got a little bit of chalk here. I want you to show me where you're going to swing the golf club. And instead of leaving no imprint because you're picking it up, I want you to brush the chalk whilst pointing the toe towards the sky. And again, notice how as I do this, as I'm brushing that chalk along the floor here, I'm getting into that similar position that I saw in the first tip. So if we can go about it and get somewhere around here in a different manner, instead of picking it up and being narrow, and if I brush it and get the toe up, notice from this camera angle again how wide my arms are. So I'm getting some width, my body's starting to get activated, all from brushing and getting the toe up instead of picking the golf club up. So get down to the range, have a few of those and see if that would work. Let's give that one a go. So we've had the pretty horrible shot. I think I should hit a better shot than that previous one we saw with the picking up motion. I'm gonna brush it and get my toe up to the sky a little bit more on this one. And pretty much an identical golf shot to the last one. So again, I'm in play, I take that. Let's have a look at this third and final backswing mistake. And this is a big one, guys. This is a big mistake and it can be really detrimental to your iron play. So let's have a look at it now. If you're enjoying these golf tips, by the way, remember to hit this subscribe button down below. I want you to get better at golf, and you're going to do that with your free lessons with me, Matt Fryer Golf, here on this channel. Hit it. Let's take a look at tip number 3. So how many times has this one happened in a backswing and you think, well, I must have done something in my downswing to cause that, but it was actually the movement in the backswing that created it when we see this shot. Nice that, 7-iron, 40 yards along the floor and a considerable chunk of the earth before the golf ball, as they would say. Hit the big ball before the little ball. And that was all to do with something that happened during my backswing there. And if I don't correct it, which consistently I'm not going to be able to correct it every time, I'm going to get that shot there, and we don't want that. And the big thing that happened was when we look on this camera here, as I move back off this golf ball, notice how where my buttons are, where my sternum's located, it's really moved off the golf ball here. So as I took my backswing, I made a conscious effort to move away from the golf ball. And what we've got to think, every time I hit a shot, the club is pretty much going to bottom out below where your buttons are, or where the middle, the zipper or the middle of your body is here. So if you've got it too far behind you and you don't move it back across and you get your slide, if you sway off, guess what? It's right below you here. So that's why I've got this big chunk of earth missing from where the middle of my body was. So what I want you to do, if you are someone who is having this problem where you feel you have this big lateral movement, this big sway in your backswing where you don't feel any rotation, I want you to take your golf club and I want you to put another cane in here like so. And what I want you to try and do is feel that instead of moving over and seeing that the club is now past your rear foot, your trail foot, I want you to make the backswing and try and get this club header here on the lead side to point and stay on top of the cane, almost pointing at the golf ball. It'll feel, if you are a swayer, that you're actually leaning a little bit into your left side. You'll feel that you're pressured this way. So as you get up to the top, notice here versus here looks completely different. So I want to feel that as I get into my backswing, I'm nice and centered now. So I've stayed on top, and then once I start my downswing, can move my weight forwards and get that ball then turf strike, because I've not had to correct anything in my backswing. So have a few of these, even if it's at home in the mirror. Get it pointing into the middle, not moving off so much. And then from there, what we should see, hopefully, this one will work and I would get a better strike. Again, I don't think I've got much to beat, but get that feeling of staying centered, and then we've got a good strike. Okay, I actually picked it off pretty cleanly there, if anything a tiny bit too thin, but I definitely stayed a lot more centered and didn't have to alter all my movements in the downswing. So those are the 3 biggest mistakes I see in people's backswings when I'm giving lessons myself. Give them a go, give those tips a go, try and identify which one are you. Do you feel you're a dragger and a roller? Do you feel you're a lifter, or are you a swayer? Use the tips then to change it, and you'll start to see that you get rid of those bad backswing mistakes and you start to hit better golf shots. Guys, thanks for watching this video. A big thank you to Alzora for having me down here. It's been fantastic. There's plenty of videos coming from here as well, so stay tuned. You'll do that by hitting the subscribe button down below. Get better at golf with me, and I'll see you in your next lesson.